We should kind of introduce who's here so they know.
Yes.
Okay, well, Darren runs the meeting, so
Yeah.
go ahead, and will be recorded on the YouTube, so.
Yeah, it looks like we're
so-
live right
Oh,
now.
here in
so-
just a second. I'll let you know.
Oh, I see live at the top of my screen.
I know.
And
You have to
action.
wait. Yes, wait for Christy. We are live and recording. Now you may start the meeting.
Oh, thank you. Good morning. This is a meeting of the Admin and Compensation Committee. On the call are the mayor, myself, Angela DiBernardo, Jim Newell, Rob Jameson, Dave Bloom. So I hereby call the meeting to order.
Okay, we asked for this meeting because we need some legislation defining what is part-time employees. It's been somewhat unclear. Before Obamacare, it was very clear, and then when Obamacare came in, it became much less clear what was a part-time and a full-time. The distinction is needing to cover part-time employees with health care benefits, which are a substantial expense. So right now, we're faced with a situation that we likely will have 2 police officers go out for some period of medical leave unrelated to COVID, back problems, basically. And those positions will need to be filled. And we've had 1 officer out on COVID quarantine because he was exposed to somebody in his house that was COVID positive. So we had some holes in the manning table, and we needed to increase the hours of our 1 part-time officer. Let me be very clear: we're not talking about adding officers. We're talking about using more part-time, and this also will affect the service and utility department, which would like to use some more part-time help in the busy summer periods, as they're really behind the gun trying to keep up with everything. And you get a situation like last year, in addition to the COVID, we had such a wet spring, they couldn't get out until it was the 11th hour, and the lack of having blossom last year was a blessing. Had they had blossom to do, they couldn't have done it, frankly. So anyhow, we've been in conversation with Dale as to what he would recommend that we comply with the law and still be able to use some part-time officers to the maximum extent that we can, and could come back to council for it, but to hire some part-time in the service department next year. I know, Dave, you want to take it from there in terms of explaining exactly what the statute is?
Well, the problem we have, and I'll defer to Rob because he's been working with Dale on it, but we have 1 employee that has been working 32 hours a week because of an increase in responsibilities, mainly taking minutes for the ARB. And we checked with Dale, and she's been working that for probably half a year now. And we checked with Dale, and he said that's basically a full-time employee. Yeah. So we need to define determine whether we could put her on as a official full-time employee, which would require a change in her healthcare status, going from none to offering it to her, or if we have to change what ARB is doing and cut back on her hours by not requiring her to do minutes anymore. So,
I mean, the ARB minutes have gotten out of hand.
yeah,
Just egregiously out of hand. So I want to cut that back. That's one issue. But I thought you'd been talking to Dale. I apologize, Rob. You want to take over what he's been saying?
Sure. So when we talked to Dale, we looked at multiple sources of what defines a part-time employee. So we looked at our employee manual, which the current definition says anybody 40 hours or over is full-time and under 40 hours is part-time, which was the simple definition that worked for many years. But as the mayor mentioned, with the Affordable Care Act, they kind of capped that at around 30 hours. So the recommendation was to keep it around 29 hours maximum for a part-time employee, or no more than 1,559 hours for the calendar year. So you could have somebody that, if their hours fluctuate, say they're a 20-hour-a-week employee, and they have a couple bursts where they have to work say up to 40 hours a week, as long as they don't exceed 1,559 in a calendar year, they'll be considered part-time. Now, the weird part of this is that under the Affordable Care Act, it only applies to employers that have 50 or more full-time equivalent employees. We currently don't have that right now, but the worry was that if more of our part-time employees, we started working more people towards that full-time number, that eventually we would get closer to that number. And Dale said that his recommendation was that we follow the guideline in the Affordable Care Act and kept it at 29 hours, or for somebody that's here year round, and then 1,559 hours for a calendar year. So we went back and looked at at coming up with a good definition that would kind of cover all of our different employment situations. And that was in the email that I sent out to the commission, outlining the definite full-time employee definition won't change, continue to be 40 hours a week. Regular part-time employees, meaning year-round employees, would be at the 29 hours per week or 1,559 hours in a calendar year. And then seasonal part-time employees, like the summer kids that we hire in streets and utilities, they can work 40 hours a week, but not to exceed 6 months in a year. We probably could push that to the 1,559 hours, but we wanted to kind of define that a seasonal worker wasn't meant to be a year-round part-time worker. We wanted to keep those definitions separate. So that's where we came up with the 3 distinctions that were recommended in the email.
I had a question for you, and I think you may have just answered it, but if a seasonal employee is 40 plus hours, and it seems like we might need that cap that you're talking about of 1,560. I mean, I don't know that anybody's getting that much overtime, but just in case,
No.
and be consistent.
We can put a little clause in there. We can say can work up to 40 hours a week, but not to exceed 1,559 hours in a calendar. We can change that a little to, I don't think we would either. Some of our summer help kids do work overtime to cover weekend trash pickup and flower watering and, things like that. But that's a good suggestion. We can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good suggestion, Darren, because God knows we've had so many unforeseen and unforeseeable emergencies this year that, I assume, you got to assume that's going to continue into the future.
And I can say also with the use of some of our skilled part-time employees that we've brought in, we have one in the street department right now, mainly for winter time use, as well as some of the abutting seasons to winter. We see the additional use of part-time employees in both streets and utilities to help fill some gaps in additional workload without increasing costs. So I think it's a good tool that we can use to get what we need done at a reasonable cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should point out, Rob had mentioned that the 50 employee threshold for Obamacare, different levels. There's no chance we can hit that.
Okay.
We only have 37 full-timers right now. We don't even have 13 full or part-time people on the roster. So
Okay.
even if they all went full-time, that we'd hit 50 right there, but we're nowhere near the 50 level. So that's not something we need to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the bottom line of this meeting. We're just trying to,
Yeah.
get the compliance in, but we really don't think we have to do this, but we want to be completely, above board and legal in case we got entrapped in something.
Has there been a conversation with this one employee who's exceeding 32 hours a week?
Yes, I've talked to her the other day. I know Dave's talked to her as well. We're trying to reach that balance, and we're looking at that situation right now and how we're going to best address.
Is she interested in getting the healthcare coverage?
I don't know about the healthcare coverage. She hasn't mentioned that. I know she does like to work as many hours as she can.
Okay.
Yeah,
She would probably be very happy if we brought her on full-time.
Is there no one else that could take, I mean, sure there is someone else that could take minutes in those ARB meetings. That sounds like that's the.
yeah, I think, Darren, that's the nub of the issue here. Some of these ARB meetings have just gotten out of control. I mean, we've had 4 and 5 hour meetings. I mean, you can, and she's sitting there not knowing what's important or what's not important. We've had people, summarize what was going on, which you would think would be the only thing that you'd have to put, but they've summarized what was going on 4 and 5 different times, and she's trying to make up her mind which is the final. So, I mean, the problem is getting the ARB under control. That's the way that you solve this. But, without trying to stop people from talking and discussing, which, we don't want to do either. I don't know what the answer is, frankly.
Can't someone on that committee be the scribe, or is that not kosher?
Well, Wendy was doing it.
Yeah, we can't have somebody on the committee do it. They did in the past. And then there was a request for greater detail in the minutes, which was also discussed by the law director. And then Wendy Naylor said she could no longer do it. And then after she stopped doing it, she said, well, I didn't realize the level that I was not contributing to the meeting because I was concentrating on taking minutes. So she said, that's the best thing that ever happened, is that I'm not doing minutes anymore and I wouldn't go back. So I really don't have anybody on the committee that could take that. I mean, right now, Joan's spending about 8 hours a week on ARB minute, interpretation. So she went from 3 days a week to 4 days a week when we added this duty. So, and she's very thorough and does an excellent job. But how do we scale that back when we have a lengthy ARB agenda and every project gets into a very thorough, detailed discussion? That's what we're trying to work out now.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really realizes it isn't in Village Hall, the extent of the construction that's going on in this town and proposed construction. I mean, ARB and Harry Edwards are, one-armed paper hangers, really, just trying to keep up with it. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
I know that's not the subject of today's meeting, but at some point I would love to hear what our legal requirements are for minutes, because I think that's a question.
Yeah, I've been down this road many times with Dale. So I can give you, the view from 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
For the granularity, I would defer to Dale. But basically, it's that you can tell who proposed what and why the various votes were taken as they were. I mean, I'd gone around with Dale. Well, we keep a tape in perpetuity of every meeting. So I wanted to go to really scaled back minutes, maybe an hour summarizing the whole meeting. And you had the tape, and if somebody came in and something that we thought was non-controversial became extremely controversial, well, then bring in a stenographer and, take the whole tape down is what I wanted to do. And we really didn't go too far down that road. But, I think that is still something possible.
I agree.
And for, things like council meetings, the electronic transcription would probably work because we could devote the time to teaching the computer our voices. But the problem is going to become, you're going to have to become, really, really strict with residents. They got to speak one at a time. They got to clearly identify themselves every time they speak. So, that's going to become aggravating.
Well, I know that's a problem that you guys are working on, but it's maybe part of the solution for the ARB for our 8 hour a week workload at some point to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said in the beginning. It's gotten to be ridiculous. But I don't know what the solution is, but I'm perfectly okay with visiting that again with Dale, and or you, Angie, feel free to call him on that point.
Okay.
And, that was my solution. Keep minimal minutes, keep the tape in perpetuity. And if we have something that comes up, then we'll transcribe it.
Okay. Thank you.
For what it's worth, I think my opinion is that until we hit that 50 full-time employee threshold, I don't need that we need to be in compliance with Obamacare definition of benefits for the employees.
Yeah, I think that's right. But at the same time, Jim, what we wanted to do is have the statutes reflect what Obamacare, said. We're probably going to, the one part-time police officer is going to effectively become full-time for at least a couple of weeks or months if people are off on leave. And, we're all a bit paranoid right now about COVID. And if it gets into the police department, how in the world we can maintain 24/7 police patrols. Amber and Jason have been, pulling full-time, patrol duty. And the same thing in the winter, if we had an outbreak in the service department with plowing and, all the departments, that's why we've tried to self-isolate here, even in the village hall.
But those are kind of temporary situations where we could look at the total hours for the year.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why we
Cut
wanted to
back and-
memorialize the 1559, even though we don't think we have to
Mhm.
comply with that because we're under the employee limit, as Dave pointed out. We're at 37 full-time employees, and that's well under the limit.
50, yeah.
And Dale also believed that there could possibly be additional changes in the coming administration to definitions of employees and hours. Obviously, nothing specific or no proposals up there, but he said there's definitely a state of fluctuation here when it comes to those definitions.
Well, I think the weather vane has swung 180 degrees between Trump and the incoming Biden administration. So that certainly would be the way to bet.
But that's down the road and we can address
Yeah, we
that.
can.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we just think that this proposal for right now, brings us into compliance with everything and reflects what we're doing. But again, that's why I said in the beginning, I don't think this is at all controversial. And we're just trying to tighten things up a bit.
You mean the legislation that we're going to
Yeah.
have Monday night?
Yeah.
Could we got to pass that this year?
I don't know.
I don't think we're not under any mandate. We would like to pass it so we could get.
Jim, I don't think we're meeting this Monday. We're not meeting till
No,
the
it's-
14th.
yeah. It's another week.
Oh, second, yeah.
Yeah, 14th.
So back to just the agenda, is everybody comfortable with the limits or the thresholds that were put out for FTE and part-time and seasonal? That Brian sent out, I am.
I am, especially if this is what Village Hall says they think would work for them and it seems to work with our employees, I have no problem with it, so.
Yeah. So we can make that recommendation to council on the 14th.
Well, we need to do it before so we can have legislation.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll tell Dale if that's the committee's recommendation, that the committee, has approved what we're talking about and draft the legislation. He usually turns this this is probably boilerplate that just
All days.
kind of finding one and changing, whatever's name's in there to Chagrin Falls. So,
I know, he has a way of saying, this is gonna take forever, and then he sends it back at 3:00 that afternoon.
yeah, right. So you'll have plenty of time to look at the actual legislation before you have to vote on it, I would assume.
The only issue is I kind of hate to push Joan back away from a preference that she has. She's a good worker and just on a personal.
She won't be. We can give her, more hours under the 59, and we can actually go more hours. But Jim, you get into a situation of treating all employees the same. If Joan is working 40 hours and she's sitting next to Linda and Linda has healthcare and Joan doesn't, I mean, that
Well,
creates.
no, yeah, that wouldn't work. I understand
Yeah.
that.
But we have to extend to her all the benefits of an FTE, which is a different conversation, I guess, but
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a 12 or some $1,000 conversation. It's not, I mean, the healthcare is not cheap.
oh, yeah, I get it.
So, you know, we're trying to really watch nickels and dimes. Hence why we've increased our use of summer help over 100%.
Right.
And what we would like to do, and John has been looking if he can find anybody, is get a seasoned, trained person that would be willing to work seasonally in the summer as Mike is willing to work in the winter. And he could then hire a couple more summer kids to work under that full-time employee and get a lot more done. I mean, people have become expectants of perfection. And, you know, that really creates some problems delivering that.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, downtown, the parks, the cemetery, you know, et cetera.
Yeah, and we've always been real thin. I mean, these guys work full hours and
Oh,
they don't
absolutely.
waste any time at all. So,
Yeah, I mean, I went out yesterday at, you know, 5:30 to start shoveling my drive, and they were coming back at 5:30 in the morning from getting the downtown totally done. And I mean, the roads were bare when I got up at 3:30, and by the time I got into work at before 8 o'clock, all the parking lots were clean. Everything was clean. It looked like there hadn't been a snow. So
yeah, no, they're good. They're good.
they're very good.
All right.
A silly question, but do we know that Joan even wants to be on our benefits?
Yeah, we just asked that.
Okay, and she does?
I
We
do
don't
not.
know.
Okay, I know our policy is, you know, if your spouse has coverage, you have to accept that coverage. And I don't know where we stand with our provider, but
Yeah,
you know.
the problem is, Darren, if where the spouse works, he has the same requirement.
No, exactly.
Then
Exactly.
you're, you know,
No
yeah.
coverage.
Well, all right.
Right. So do we need a vote or anything? Or are we good? Do we need to, or there's nothing here to this is just a discussion. Okay,
Yeah, we just move it to Dale, right?
right. So Dale's got to make something up now. Okay.
Yeah, I'll take care
Rob,
of
you
it.
want to talk to him?
Yep.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else. We are just in passing. I'm going to have a meeting with via Zoom with all the employees and just describe the healthcare change that the committee has recommended to council because we're not meeting till so late in the year, December the 14th. If I waited until December 14th, I'd give them, you know, 2 weeks to know they're getting a new health. So I'm going to tee that up as it was a recommendation of the administration to admin and comp, and admin and comp is going to recommend it to council. But this is what we're thinking of going. We're going to have that next Tuesday at 7 p.m. We decided to hold it at 7 p.m. so spouses can listen in if they have any questions, because invariably, if you go home and tell your wife or your wife comes up to you, you got another question, say, gee, I hadn't thought of that. And so it's going to be an open forum.
Great idea.
That's great.
And this will be on the 14th it has to be passed this year.
Yes, that has to be passed this year.
Okay.
The fraud policy, we don't need to cover because we covered it last time, right? I saw you
Right.
sent that out with the email, but we're.
Yeah, that was just the revisions, just to let everybody know what we did.
Yeah.
We did a couple tweaks we made. If anybody has any questions or comments on that, we'll take that and we'll process that through as well.
Sounds good. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you.